So, this should be started. Hi everyone, I'm not sure if this is working. It's Adrian, and Kirby will be joining me shortly. She's just checking that the stream is actually working. And we will be so I expect Kirby to appear momentarily. But as probably a lot of you are aware, there was a gigantic, well, first off, that Donald Trump was elected. Secondly, that his inauguration was a couple of days ago. And that thirdly, there was a giant reaction to it in terms of not just women, but predominantly women marching all around the major cities in America. Kirby and I went to Chicago, which we had 250,000 people there. And that was enough that we couldn't actually march. The streets were just too clogged. There were 750,000 women and their supporters marching in LA, and we were told that the biggest one was in Washington. I don't actually know how many were marching in Washington, but suffice to say that there were a lot of people marching, and it gave me... You joining me?
Oh, yeah.
So it's working,
I wasn't sure if you were going to introduce me.
I think people know who you are.
So
I have just been telling you guys, you've heard me, you're in the back room. But it gave me a lot of hope in terms of, I mean, you put out that video when Donald Trump was elected and there was a certain element of despair, yet hope. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of what I got was, there are certainly a lot of people who have now been galvanized into taking action. Mm-hmm. And one of the great messages also was that it was about unity and unifying. I was telling you this yesterday. It's not about making Trump supporters wrong. It is also about everyone feeling like they're involved and on board. And we'll go into it. We did have, I mean, Kirby posted an Instagram photo yesterday that was very innocuous, just about, why I march. And you've had a couple of people, men, I'm ashamed to say, jump on board already and start doing the Donald Trump dance, shall we say. Mm-hmm. But why don't we start with, I mean, you mentioned this, I'm going to call it an opportunity because that's what it ended up being, and I decided I needed to go, and you decided that's where you needed to be. Mm-hmm. So why did you decide that you needed to go?
After I posted my Donald Trump vlog, mm-hmm. I was really passionate about it. First of all, if you haven't seen my Donald Trump vlog, it was my initial response to waking up after falling asleep on the couch on election night, and the first thing I did was check my phone and see that the headline from the CNN notification that Vladimir Putin congratulates
Donald Trump
in his presidential win. And I just felt compelled to make a video. It was 4 a.m. when I woke up and saw this and just wanted to share my initial knee-jerk reaction. And
it was a very real and raw video.
Yes.
And you told me you were immediately unsure as to whether you should post it.
Yeah, but I knew that it had to go out, and I wasn't at no point have I been ashamed of it. I had friends reach out and be concerned for, I think, my mental health, and it was fascinating to me because I don't regret what I had to say. Throughout the video, I expressed what I was feeling and what I think so many others were feeling, which was disenfranchisement and feeling just confused, because it was this crashing down feeling like, wow, we really live in these echo chambers of social media, and it put a lot of things in perspective. So now I felt compelled to go to this march yesterday because in that video, what I asked, no matter what you feel, and no matter what side of the aisle you're on, I asked for action, and I asked to get involved and to stand up for what you believe in, no matter what you believe in. And if I didn't go to this march, then I would be a hypocrite. And
well, you put it in more words than that. First off, you had training at Spire, so at the gym. So you decided that that wasn't as important, and that you worded it to me as if and when you have a daughter, you want to be able to tell her that you went to this event.
Absolutely. I mean, I want to be on the right side of history, and I want to support not only women, but what I believe a lot of what the message that's being lost on a lot of people is that this march isn't just about women. It's that women, as women, we are the caretakers, we are the nurturers, and we have your back, and we have had your back for so long. And whether that is...
Okay, when you're saying your back, who are you talking to?
We're talking to the men in our lives. And now in this rise of talking about women's rights, it's the equivalent of human rights. That's what we're talking about. And it doesn't matter what ethnicity, what religion, what race, what sexuality, what intersection you decide to identify yourself with. It's about representing you, and it's about making your voice heard. So that is why I marched, and among other reasons. So I felt 2 days ago now, I asked Adrian if he would march with me, and he
I agreed, because similar to yourself, I felt it was a place to be. You mentioned history. I think history is going to remember this occasion when Donald Trump was elected, and regardless of your political beliefs, because I want to emphasize, I'm not making Trump supporters wrong, and neither are you, because there were many valid reasons that you could have voted for him and not liked Hillary Clinton. But history, I think, is going to show that in terms of women's rights, which I equate to human rights, that there's no sitting on the fence on this. So you are either for equality or against it. And I don't think that there's any middle ground. So when Kirby asked me to go, it was like, well, it sounds right. I will also say I have never been to Chicago. I wanted a Chicago pizza. And
a strong first impression of Chicago at that.
And you had a good laugh at my expense because I didn't know about Dunkin' Donuts, and I wanted to know
that was the funniest thing ever.
Who Duncan was. I'm never gonna live that one down.
So here's what happened. So we're walking down the street, and we see Dunkin' Donuts after Dunkin' Donuts because they're everywhere. And Adrian looks at me and says, "Who's Dunkin'?" And it was just
she
so
made
funny.
me do it again because she wanted to Snapchat it. So it's the height of my embarrassment.
I will live in that moment forever.
We're moving on. It was certainly my first protest. Was it your first? Well, not protest, but a march, I guess.
It was, yeah.
And 250,000 people, which I never felt an energy like that. And as I mentioned, we couldn't march because the streets were too clogged. We basically marched in place. What were your biggest takeaways? How were you feeling there? You took a lot of photos, a lot of video. I guess if you were to summarize to people who maybe couldn't make it, what would you say to them?
It was an extremely powerful experience for me and extremely emotional to me. Before we even made it onto the main street where we were, where the rally was, just seeing the amount of people showing up. I saw little girls, and I saw all the way up to women using walkers, and people with disabilities, I saw a sign that said "I'm here because I have stage 4 cancer."
I saw that one. That was such a powerful one.
Everybody has their reasons why they want to be treated as a human. And it was extremely powerful to me and shifting in the sense that we do a lot of talking in our day-to-day lives. No matter what the issue is, we do a lot of talking and not necessarily constructive. And I think you know me, that I don't like to be a part of something. I don't like to put my name on something unless I'm all in on that something. Yep. And I also don't like to have conversations unless they're constructive and unless they push us forward in some shape. And just showing up was, for so many women, pushing us forward. And I know from my own experience, I've felt completely isolated at times in my life, especially in this past year.
Yeah, because you used the word disenfranchised, and to me that's that's a big word. It's not very emotional, but isolated and alone, right?
Right. And going to being a part of a crowd that was of that magnitude was an experience that's
you'll never forget.
It's unforgettable. I mean, it's something I'm proud to be a part of and proud to continue talking about. And the takeaway that you asked me about is getting involved to make actionable change.
Yeah.
It's not just a conversation for me. It's a mindset and a shift in my own lifestyle. Because I don't do something unless I'm practicing what I preach.
Well, unless you're all in. So, I do want to say, I had this interesting discussion, I think it was on Thursday, and I asked, we were at, it was FemFest, Fem Talk, and I was one of only 2 guys there, which is fine. And someone said, Katie said, I want to open up the floor to people who haven't talked yet, and I hadn't talked, and I was actually getting quite frustrated sitting there. So I opened my mouth, maybe it didn't come out eloquently, but I said, this is all great, but what I want to know is, as someone who's all in on female empowerment as well, what are you going to do? Like, what is the actual outcome out of here? And some people, I feel, took a bit of offense to that. It's like, oh, well, we have to start with talking. And I'm like, I'm not saying don't talk. I think talking, having a conversation is actionable, and that's a start. But I'm all in on like what's actually going to happen from here. And we had an interesting conversation on the way back with our Uber driver, Siobhan, who's also obviously a woman. And she said, yeah, it's all great, but my fear is that, Donald Trump won't take any action and we can't force him to. So then what? But I guess before we go on to the actionable items, and I know that we had a conversation earlier today where you got clarity as to maybe what your role in the movement is going to be. And I do think it's going to be a movement. It has to be a movement. We had an interesting conversation already because of your post on Instagram. And as soon as you open your mouth and say the F word, and I'm talking feminism, not fuck, it's for a change when it comes to you, although there may be fucks as well. A 16-year-old who, I kind of want to let you take this one, and can you describe the feeling you got when you got that comment? I don't exactly remember what it was, but you will know, as a woman, if you're watching, or even as a guy, when someone brings up the word feminism and there's that guy in there who just has to open his mouth and has to be, shall we say, ill-informed. But what was your initial reaction to that?
Well, interesting conversation is how you phrased it, and I appreciate that. It's a nice way of putting it.
Politically correct way.
But yeah, one of my Instagram followers commented on my post that and my post, by the way, was a photo of no people, just a sign we saw at the march that said, "Nasty women keep fighting." That's it. And what he said was,
the photo is here.
Oh, right, yeah.
Since
hopefully you can see it.
Nasty women keep fighting.
Yeah.
Follow her on Instagram.
Yeah, thanks.
Subtle plug.
So, what this guy commented was,
well, let me.
I
I'm
hate
going
how you feminists.
I'm going to remind you of some of the ones he said. He said the wage gap is a myth.
Well, but I want to remember the initial post. It was,
Is it there?
it was something about how, you feminists, and I mean, it was just, vilifying the word.
Well, I want to say that he certainly lumped all feminists together as one group, as in like everyone who identifies as a feminist must feel exactly the same way, have the same beliefs and values. Have you got it there?
Well, I have the
You
gist.
have the reactions.
Yeah, I have the gist.
Okay.
So, what he said was that all you feminists want is to take down the patriarchy that doesn't exist, and if a man came in and did the same things that you're doing, then you would attack him and go and cry and say that that it's all men's fault. And
he was saying that, I think he was saying that you all want to fight for equal rights, but if a man basically says anything, you're all going to cry.
Right. Which is funny. But, so as with anything, I said I appreciate what
you were
you
so
have to say.
diplomatic about it.
Well, because
maybe too diplomatic.
What I said is that's not exactly the point. So I invite you to have a conversation about this. I'm interested in hearing and understanding your view. I always welcome constructive dialogue.
And that's verbatim. She's reading off her Instagram.
Because the thing is that we are not going to get anywhere if we can't have a conversation and we can't de-escalate this and talk to each other. We are so surprised by these echo chambers, and yet we don't want to reach across the aisle to people who have disagreements with us, and they have valid points. So what I want to do is I have people in my life who I love the most who voted for Donald Trump. I don't love them any less. I validate their hurt. I validate their opinions. I validate how they feel. But I want to understand it. And I think it's an effort on both sides to understand each other.
And I definitely think we need to delve into that. So you and I were talking earlier as to if we're going to move the conversation forward. I word it as seeking out people who disagree with you. And this actually came up at the march yesterday, which I was so thankful for, because a lot of the speakers were saying, seek out people who disagree with you, engage them in conversation, even if you disagree with them, engage them in conversation, respect their views, and basically love them, even though they have different views. Whereas I feel a lot of the time the conversation, particularly in this space, and kind of yesterday to an extent, became, at a certain point, it wasn't constructive, it was name calling. It was, oh, you're stupid, you don't get it. That's one side of it. The other side was confusing opinion with fact, which is another huge thing. But basically I chipped in because obviously I follow Kirby, and I saw that and I immediately responded, and it got to the point.
Adrian was like, it's go time.
I was just so worked. I was like, I'm not going to let this one slip, because I always tell content media creators, don't feed the trolls. I'm like, well, fuck it. I'm going to feed this troll until he explodes, and then whatever. But he said to me, like, as a woman, you wouldn't understand, basically. And I'm like, no, I'm a guy.
Yeah, he assumed you're a woman because you're standing up for women.
Exactly.
Because why wouldn't you be able to stand up for women unless you're a woman?
And
there's no other possibility.
Then he called me an SJW, and I didn't know what that was. Turns out it's social justice warrior, which apparently is a bad thing.
Which I see no downside.
Explain that to me. And to quote, I would never get laid. So at that point,
is too bad.
This is, and I responded saying I didn't realize that was a point, like getting laid was a point. But that's what I want to get to, is we need more dialogue. We need more discussion, but we can't do it if it devolves into either side calling the other side names. We can't lump Trump supporters all as racist, elitist bigots, and they can't lump the other side into bra burning feminists. You want to chip in here?
It's I something that we love to throw around as millennials is this idea in this generation of the spectrum, that you land on a spectrum of sexuality, you land on a spectrum of gender fluidity, and it's a spectrum. It is. There is no good versus bad. And if we don't make an effort to understand each other, then we get nowhere. And what I experienced, I'm not sure if we actually talked about this, but what I experienced after the march, we were 250,000 strong. Adrian and I, we met at the train station about 5:30 in the morning, and we made our way from Milwaukee to Chicago, and we stayed on our feet the whole day, and we stayed until the end of the rally, all the way up until
the very end.
The very
till
end.
They made their way off the stage.
Yep. And we made it all the way from the time that it was packed to capacity, so that we actually couldn't march. We had to stay.
Yeah. They taught us march in place.
Right. We had to stay stationary, which is great. That's fantastic. But we stayed until so many people had left that we were right at the stage where it was, the message was coming from. And as soon as we left that march, as we said earlier, this has been, there are many times in my life, especially as someone who deals with depression and anxiety, where I have felt extremely isolated and alone, and that's kind of the nature of that anyway. But in feeling that, you go to this stark contrast of having this community that you're not alone. You're not alone. And in fact, these are the faces around you that feel you. You know, I feel you
at a very deep level.
And as soon as we exited and we walked across the bridge, I immediately saw women leaving the march and being yelled at by men about how they're too late, that sexism is never going to be gone. And I just thought, what are you winning from this? I mean, do you not have enough?
You didn't mention this to me.
Well, it was incredibly, I saw women being deliberate, kind of spitefully catcalled and yelled at. And it just, my initial reaction was reality hitting really fast and really hard. But then I really processed it, Adrian, and I took it in and I let it marinate. And it actually makes me really optimistic. And the reason that I feel that anyone really lashes out like that is from fear. And I think that they recognize a change in the tide.
I was going to say that,
and it scares them. So I would relate it exactly from the men who are yelling at women on the street for simply showing up, and it's exactly the same as if they're trolls on my page, and it comes from fear. And the thing is, where we need to bridge this gap of understanding and not just spew opinions and spew
that was last night in a nutshell. As
Kellyanne Conway said today in a press conference, alternative facts.
Okay.
We're
otherwise known as fiction.
Right. We need to we need to be based in logic on both ends,
Yeah.
Otherwise, if we don't have this basis, we cannot progress.
Yeah.
And having these trolls, I want to bridge the understanding. I want to understand them. I want them to understand.
Well, we
me.
tried last night.
Well,
It's not like
yes.
we slagged him off and said, you're an idiot.
But I think through the experiences that I've had, and including the phone call I recently had that I talked to you about, that's just kind of more personal to me. Sure. So I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but having to explain myself for why I want to be treated as an equal is
alarming,
and it's an interesting experience.
Come on. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just it doesn't make sense to me to have to explain why I deserve to be treated equally, but I think that this fear stems from an unsubstantiated feeling from men and other people who are threatened that their rights are going to be taken away. And that's the thing. That's the thing, is that nobody's talking about taking away those rights.
Yeah, that's something that again came up last night. I want to hit on this, that you mentioned what you wanted was to be treated as an equal. And then one of your comments basically point blank was, do you think that I should be treated as an equal? And he answered with, yes, but do you think I should be treated as an equal? And to me,
And I answered with, yes, welcome to feminism.
Yeah, and I was hopeful that the conversation was going to end there. It didn't. But we're both big on actionable items. So in terms of having an intelligent conversation, I've been talking to you about this, and I mentioned it before. It's like actively seek out people who disagree with you.
Yes.
Argue as passionately as you want about the subject matter. Don't make it personal, and then back up your opinions with facts. Even bearing in mind that, of course, one
sources.
Yes, and one site can say something, and another source could say another thing. But don't confuse your opinion with facts. So, for example, what was happening last night was he was saying wage gap was a myth. It was like, okay, that could be possible completely, and in some people's experience, it's even true. But statistically, what do the facts say? And he couldn't quite jive onto this, or maybe he didn't want to, because it does take effort to actually, research rather than just have an opinion.
Not that much. I mean, there is the Google.
Yes, but it's easier to hate people than to,
I'm just on the opposite end of the spectrum.
I know
I
you
find
are.
it so hard to hate people. I just want to love them.
But in terms of actively having an intelligent discussion, even an argument, would you add anything to that? So actively seek them out, keep it, about the subject matter, don't make it personal, and then back up your opinions with sources and statistics, not alternative facts.
Alternative facts.
Good enough?
Good enough. I think that it's to each his own, to everyone's
To each
personal,
his or her own.
Thank you. To your own personal volition, how far you can take this. So for actionable items, something that I would completely cement what you just said. But to add to that, there was an extremely powerful moment yesterday at the march when one of the speakers asked the crowd, look to your right, look to your left, and ask the people next to you, what can I do for you? Yes. And tell them what you can do for me. Yeah. And that was tremendously powerful because you and I had a similar experience there.
Yeah. I will remember that woman's face for the rest of my life, and she was holding a red and black broom, and I think it was clean the kitchen and sweep the Senate. And this woman, when we were asked that question, I was caught unprepared, And she mentioned a very specific case. I think she had seen a young black man being bashed in the street. And she said, if you see that happening, do something about it. That's what I'm asking of you. And then she turned to me and I'm like, I don't have anything because I didn't want to ask her. And for me, it was like, I want to be able to show up for you. And for you, it was tell me how I can show up for you, right?
Right. I came to that situation not prepared at all to answer how you can show up for me. But what she said kind of reflected what I had to say in my Donald Trump video. And she looked at us and she said, exactly what you're doing right now. Show the fuck up. So it's a start. Have the conversations, have the difficult conversations, and support the people around you. Make an effort to understand, even if it's of differing perspective. And as I was saying, it's going to be to each person's different passion and volition what you decide to do next. Whether it's getting involved with local government, getting involved with something that you care about, but it's becoming more and more evident that we cannot just sit back and think that we're going to be taken care of.
Can we talk about the whole, we accept everyone. I do feel there has to be a point though where for those people who are living in denial and saying sexism doesn't exist, the glass ceiling doesn't exist to some extent, women are already being treated as more than equal. I just want to point to the fact that, if 1 million people, if 750,000 people, men and women march in LA, 250,000 in Chicago, more than that number in Washington. And a very powerful image that I'll always have with me for the rest of my life is, there was a Trump Tower in Chicago and the police, the American police were there to protect the president's property against the American people, which to me is like, that doesn't seem like America. I'm not American, but to me it sounded like that's more like a police state. I don't think you can be in denial when you see those numbers, right? I mean, there must be an issue. Not that many people would gather if there's no issue, right?
Right.
So yes, everyone is entitled to their opinion. I'm not saying anything denigrating that, but there is an issue. There has to be an issue, right? I mean, would you agree with that level?
I would agree if there are...
I mean, otherwise, why the hell, more than 700... They brought Lower Manhattan to a standstill.
Right. And not only that, a lot of people say, I've heard it before, that here in the U.S. we have it so good. And yet we're not there. And we set a precedent for the rest of the world. Internationally, people are watching, and internationally, it is worse. We don't deal with wide-scale gender mutilation. We don't deal with with the rates of
well, there are places where women are taken out and beaten.
Right, of burnings and murders and people throwing acid on women and victimizing those who have been raped. We don't deal with it on the same scale, but it doesn't mean that it's not something that we can help with. And us working to protect our rights that we're so afraid are going to be taken away by the people in power at the moment it's vital to setting a tone for the rest of the world.
What I want to jump in just quickly and say, if this is supposed to be a discussion as well. We talk about discussion, so if you have any questions, obviously submit them below. I do want to say quickly to Ira, if you're still watching, hi Ira, I'll see you tomorrow. We'll see you tomorrow. And what do you say about feminists wanting to be greater than, not just equal to? Well, that's a tricky one. I would say I certainly don't. I'm not saying I don't agree that doesn't happen. Obviously, it does, but it's similar to not lumping all white men together, not lumping all feminists together. I'm very much for equality, and I think I don't want to speak for you.
Yeah.
That would be your your thing as well.
Yeah, I think I've made that very clear.
Yes, and I think statistically you can't deny that white men have more privilege than certainly white women and women of color. But what you said yesterday, for example, in terms of being sexually harassed at many jobs, and just being able to be free of that. I mean, that's a basic right that I feel a lot of men can't understand, because men aren't normally sexually harassed. And a lot of men, to speak frankly, think that's okay. They think catcalling is okay, touching them on the rear is okay. So I absolutely agree that there are some feminists who want to make themselves the superior gender, the superior race. I'm not talking about that here. So, but if you have a discussion, certainly put it below, and we'll deal with it as best we can, because we want to have a discussion. But we were talking earlier about actionable steps.
Yes.
So in terms of where do we go from here? Because the march is great. Having a discussion, opening the discussion is a great first step. Where to from here? Trump's in power, for better or worse. I really hope that he becomes the best president ever.
I do too.
You do too.
I do.
And I
hope he surprises the hell out of me. I want nothing more than to completely eat my words. I do. I want to be wrong so badly, more now than ever in my life.
It's unusual to want to be wrong, isn't it?
I want to be wrong. Yeah.
But in terms of actionable steps. So let's say, at least say people are not feeling so alone anymore. After this, hopefully people realize you're not alone if you're feeling disenfranchised. There are a lot of people who feel the same way. What do I do? What would you say some of the steps are, in terms of what are some of the small things you can do, then what are some of the bigger things that you can do? And I'm asking you because obviously as a woman, but also you live in America, you're more aware of the systems here.
I would say number one, I attended my first Lean In group chapter meeting in my area this week, and that is such an easy way to connect with other women. And if you are feeling disconnected or disenfranchised, it is a great first step. And all you have to do is go to leanin.org, and they will connect you with local circles and local chapters that you can so easily plug into. And that can be a catalyst to rolling out the next step. It's extraordinary. If you need to, so that's one step.
Yeah.
Another step is reading the book Lean In, or reading Half the Sky. That's a great one as well. It's both of these reads are two of my personal favorites, and they have great advice. They have.
What was the other one? The book, sorry.
Half the Sky. So they both provide excellent advice in terms of how to further the cause and further more action. And the thing is, in anything in this life, the best thing that you can do for yourself is arm yourself with information. And nothing bad can really come with that. When you educate yourself with what is what's going on, and you plug into that, then you're equipped to be confident to speak about it and to feel comfortable enough to stand up for what you believe in. So those are two action items that I would say. Can you?
Well, I would certainly start by having a discussion. As much as I said it's about action. I mean, the first step is often being able to talk to your family about it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, talk to your brother, your sister, your friends, and I guarantee you, not all of them are going to agree.
Yeah.
And the real litmus test of whether you're on board this in terms of unity, or you're on it for ego and you want to be right, is going to be that first time you talk to someone you disagree with, and how do you handle that? Like, do you try to bring people together, or you're going to divide and conquer and say, you're wrong, I'm right, suck it up sort of thing? So I would certainly say, start by having the discussion, because cluing into what you said, if you have a discussion, you meet like-minded people, then even if there's no one next to you, you feel less disenfranchised. And that's a huge thing. And then in terms of joining a group, in terms of if you're leading one of those groups, I would ask that you have outcomes for each meeting that go beyond simply talking about it, and do not ever have just one meeting. The very minimal action item you need to have is, when is our next meeting going to be? Do not leave it as, let's all catch up at some time. Because you know how well that's going to work. Because everyone is super busy. It's not going to happen. You know, say, okay, let's, and someone please have the balls, the cojones to say, let's set a date, let's do this one.
Or the ovaries.
Yes, true. I will never be woman enough to do that. Have the ovaries to say, let's aim for February, this date, or the fourth Friday of every month. And then if people are going to disagree, fine, but at least you have a target. And I feel these groups need to meet. They need to meet more often. They need to have actionable goals. And it can't just be, we'll meet when we're passionate, and then nothing.
Yeah. The thing that I think people get confused about, and I love that Ira said this in the comments. He said, in my opinion, women and men provide different abilities. It's about working together. And I couldn't agree more, Ira.
Same.
We have some common ground,
Yeah.
both supporting each other. It's important that we don't frame this fight as men versus women, because I am not trying to take anything from you.
There's no winner in that fight.
There is no divide and conquer for me. There is no winner.
Yeah.
When I'm trying, I think when we discuss winning, it's trying to just be validated in being treated the same. Yes, we have different abilities, and we have different things to recognize about each other that I love. I love our differences. I love that I'm not the same as you. But
I'm quite thankful you're not the same as me.
I'll take that as a compliment.
Definitely.
But we have to be able to work together, because we need allies in this. And it's not just about the fact that I have a vagina. It's about,
wow, it's that time already.
It's about, it's over and over yesterday, we kept hearing and seeing the phrasing, women's rights is human rights. So this fight isn't just about me and my reproductive organs. It's about fighting for people who are voiceless, people who are not being represented. It's, as I alluded to earlier in the broadcast, it's people of differing ethnicity, background of all kinds, sexuality, gender. It's allowing you to be you. It's saying that our little girls, who they don't have to work as hard as we've had to work just to be allowed to be themselves.
Yeah. And
they deserve better.
Sorry to interrupt, but in concrete steps, it's very, we're not talking about, men versus women. And I think it's about equality, not making men and women the same. I mean, men and women are not the same, but what women are asking for and minorities are asking for is equality. And to give some concrete examples, again, with the Instagram thing last night, you talking about this young man said, men work harder, women take more holidays, and, men are 4 times or more likely to die. And then he brought the example of, if you want to be paid equally, then go down to the sewers and pull out rats, which I didn't understand because I'm a man and I never pulled out rats of a sewer. So apparently I'm not a man. But because you talked about that in terms of, for example, equal pay for the same job. And you mentioned what you had to do in terms of being able to working that hard, much harder than the men, like all the men put together.
Yes, I did have I was in a job situation where I was being sexually harassed physically, emotionally, mentally, and was in a situation where I actually had been stalked as well in this situation, and to hear the point of the Instagram troll last night saying that that I don't work as hard as men in that job in particular.
I thought you might bite at that one.
No, because nobody wins if I lose my cool.
It's still fun too sometimes, but continue.
So, the point is that the example is that you asked about is that in that job I was the only woman on staff, and of everyone for the month, I worked more hours than everyone else on staff actually combined, and I still was paid less for my work, even though I was bringing in more revenue to the club than anyone else, and it shouldn't be like that.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah.
So I'm going to chime in again. If you're watching and you want to be part of the discussion, submit something, because it's no good if you're silent. If you have an opinion, whatever it is, put it in. Do you want to speak to Ira's comment here? So women have in the last 10 years been diving into the professional ranks. It's happening, and just chime in, I absolutely agree that it's happening. I'm not sure that can be, I don't know if that's because of men or white men. I think it, to some extent, you could argue that's in spite of. And when you look at what some of the women have had to do to be taken seriously or getting equal pay, for a man in some cases it's a given. For a woman, sometimes she has to demand it. So do you want to speak to that?
I think that's, that's absolutely true. And it leaves me extremely optimistic. It makes me very optimistic. Ira's girlfriend is a great shining example of that.
Sure.
And Ira, we're gonna call you out for a second, just because you're here and you're in.
No, you're participating. Well, let's say we're calling him out. It's great. He's participating.
No, but I know his girlfriend doesn't like to be
media. Okay.
So but I have the utmost respect for her, and she has worked very hard. She is so smart, and to be a dentist, and the thing, her mother is a dentist, and the thing that leaves me so hopeful is that her mother was one of just a couple or a few women in this dental class when she was there. And when Ira's girlfriend came through school, it was completely 50-50. So yes, there are things happening that are leading to change and leading to equality. And I'm so proud of her as a shining example, but also of the work that's being done. And it leaves me to be extremely optimistic, but we can't stop. So I want to ask you, yesterday, it was such a poignant moment for us, for you and I personally, as friends. In that moment that they asked us, what can you do for me and what can I do for you? And I think it would be a really good question to ask each other and be able to answer right now.
Put me on the spot.
Well, I'm putting myself on the spot because I don't have a great answer. I don't have anything planned or something.
Well, hang on. So we talked about this earlier. So obviously with my work with Genie Magazine, I set out approximately 2 years ago to level the playing field, because I coached at an all-girls school for a few years, and I saw, you'd have to be blind not to see the problems that girls were going through. And not all of them are feminism related. A lot of them are just actually girls, fighting against girls and doing it in certain ways. But I'm always one who wants to jump in for the underdog, whether it's male or female, and I just happen to dive into that area. But finding inspiring role models and interviewing them to show, as Kirby said, disenfranchised, to lessen that. So people can see that it's all right to be everything. And I was thinking about this today. I think, to me, feminism is about a woman being able to express whatever the hell she wants in whatever form she wants without having to go, is it all right with that man there that I do this? Because I feel like men don't really have that same conversation in their head at nearly the same level. But for example, when I was here, I interviewed Danielle, who works at Spire, and she's a complete, can you say badass for me because I can't?
Badass.
She's a complete one of those.
Yeah. She's one of my favorite people.
She is a hardcore trainer at the gym. Like I'm kind of scared of her, and she's like about your height, and yet she's a doctor. She's doing now a postdoc, so she's Dr. Berg.
She's an
astrophysicist, and for any young girl growing up, I mean, the great role model in terms of not being an astrophysicist, but you can be this hardcore killing it at the gym and then do a really nerdy kind of dorky, as she said, job that requires incredible amounts of intelligence. And I think that's great. I think we need to put that message out more, that it's about expressing all the different parts of you. You interviewed Nick Morrow, you interviewed Jeanette Seha, and they're both absolutely killing it in their fields and being pioneers to a large extent, right? Doing things that no one's done before. So in terms of what I want to do is more of what I'm doing and on a larger scale, but also making it more concrete. So it's not just an online interview, but actually, and this will lead into what we discussed earlier in terms of organizing real networks, real events, and creating real change. So it's not just, oh, that was a nice interview, but wow, that woman inspired me to do this. Maybe now she's representing people in the political system and creating real change, which I want to lead on to you about, pass the question over to you, because we mentioned you in terms of what you were going to do, being able to take a leadership role, right?
Yeah, for me, yesterday was such a shift because the past year personally for me has been tough because I've always been a person who has steadfast direction, and I always know what I'm working toward. And it's doing my current job as a content creator, teaching tennis online, has fulfilled me in ways I could have never predicted and never expected. And it is so satisfying to connect with the people I get to coach on a daily basis that it's completely shifted what my dreams have been since I was 5 years old. And it's a great problem to have. It's been completely confusing to figure out what my message would be and what am I working toward? What am I building personally? And it finally makes sense to me that I didn't make it on tour. I didn't, I'm not making millions of dollars on the WTA, and instead I did have these experiences of being sexually harassed, and it altered the course of my life forever. And I have learned so much from coaching and from getting to connect with people that is all for something. I think that every experience in your life leads you up to the one that you're living right now. And it's a culmination of events. And I have worked very, very hard since those difficult life past experiences. I've worked very hard on myself just to think of myself as worthy in any way. And I've worked very hard to love myself. And it's, actually new for me. And so it's finally coming together for me in the messaging that this is where the focus is for me. And this is, it's in shifting the ideal to creating actionable change. And that is putting in more female representation, whether it's in sports or in the political landscape. So that is now my biggest takeaway from the march and what I'm going to be working toward.
Well, I can't think of anyone better to lead the charge.
Well, thank you.
You have a fan.
Oh my gosh, Kevin, you rock my world. Like Ira too. Ira rocks my world.
I clicked on Ira. I liked his comments, but if you want, I can unlike them so that you can like them.
We'll just say double like.
Well, okay. All right. And look, if you have any last minute discussion, just please put them below. But I think in terms of wrapping up, we need to have more intelligent discussion.
On both ends, yeah. And
Yeah.
patience and understanding. Yeah.
Yeah.
And love.
And
love.
And intelligent discussion that leads to actionable change. And I was telling Kirby this, you do whatever you can do at the time. You make the best decision you can at the time. And even if it's just one little thing, like you were talking about, maybe you thought Milwaukee wasn't the best place to launch this, but now you're thinking maybe this is the perfect place to launch this.
Launch this meaning working toward.
Yeah, working
toward bettering.
Yeah.
The landscape for women.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because there's an incredible community of very strong women here. I don't know how many people know that, but having that intelligent discussion, leading it to actionable change, and then beyond everything else, can we just treat each other with a bit of respect and common sense? Because from my experience, I don't know about your experience, but common sense ain't that common. So it's a bit of an interesting topic, and I'm hopeful. I think I do want to chip in that I think when this change occurs, when the revolution has occurred and everyone is treated as equal, it's not women standing on the top of the mountain and men going, oh my God, everyone's been treated equal. I would say that it's happened, to speak to one of Ira's earlier points, it maybe happened because of Trump in terms of him being elected and a lot of people, not everyone, mobilized behind that. But I would not probably give him the credit for it. I don't want to give him the credit for it. I think that's an important thing. So yes, it might have happened because it's like when some parents says, I treated you horribly and look how you turned out. It's like, well, yeah, in spite of, not because, right? So don't let anyone take your power away. But I'm hoping that's where this all leads to. Mm-hmm. So in 3, 5, 10 years time, where do you hope this discussion is at? I do want to point out that one of the signs that at the protest was, can't believe I still have to protest this shit 60 years later. It's like, that was great. Great.
I hope that we have concrete, tangible action items in place at that time. I hope that what I want to see is statistically more female representation and that we have made strides, tangible strides for each group that we are claiming to be accountable for.
Yeah.
Everyone of every background.
Yeah.
It's from the humanist perspective.
Yeah.
It's not just because it's not white women. It's not, as the guy in the diner said, white Stepfords.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all of us. We're in it together. And I think we've ended our podcast before. We've never done it live, but we've ended our podcast before, just reiterating to people that they're not alone. And I just want people out there to know that we are always going to keep the conversation going, and we are always here, no matter where you fall in the aisle. It's an open space.
I want to emphasize that if you are a woman and you're feeling disenfranchised, that you should reach out.
I'm here. Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy for you to reach out to me, but there's a certain perspective that I will never have. So reach out, and then you'll you'll give her accountability. She'll have to become a leader.
I got a lot of love.
Yeah.
I'm ready to
give it.
Yeah.
Because there's no shortage of love. You can give love to one person. It doesn't mean you ran out of love for the next person.
Yeah.
So if you are feeling disenfranchised, if you don't know who to reach out to, or you can't find a group, reach out to Kirby, and she will help you. Well, I'll leave it at that. She'll help you.
I have no problem with that.
Okay.
All right.
I think we're done.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We did it live. All right. Speak to you guys later. Do you want to?
Oh, I love you, Stephanie. I'll see you soon. Thank you for your comments. See you guys.